Hello and welcome. My name is Stacy Bersani, Program Manager for IEEE Kappa Nu. IEEE is the world's largest technical professional organization dedicated to advancing technology for the benefit of humanity. We thank you all for joining us for our 2021 Pathways to Industry program. Before we begin, please note a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen are engagement tools for you to use. All tools are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to make the most out of your space. Note that we recommend using a wired internet connection to access today's presentation and closing any programs or browser settings running in the background that could cause issues. There is no dial-in number for this event. Please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so that you can hear our presenter. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues by clicking the orange question mark or help icon at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions for today's presenter, you can submit them through the Q&A widget on your screen or click the purple Q&A icon at the bottom. We will answer as many questions as time allows. If you click the green resources icon at the bottom of your screen, you'll find more information about upcoming events, including the interactive networking sessions being held this week and the one being held immediately following this program. Finally, the on-demand link for today's event will be emailed to all registrants. Our virtual event today is 12 Key Decisions That Influenced My Career, presented by John McDonald. During this session, John, the Smart Grid Business Development Leader for GE's Grid Solutions business, will discuss 12 important things to keep in mind when living and managing your career to achieve your goals. If you would like to post on Facebook about this event, please use the hashtag IEEE-HKN. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Nancy Ostin, the Director of IEEE Kappa Nu.
Thank you, Stacy, and welcome to everyone. We're really glad you're joining us for this third session of our first day of our Pathways to Industry program. Pathways to Industry is really to help get information to you that you'll need to start going into your career as a young professional, as a student entering the workplace. So I was really thrilled today when John McDonald agreed to do this workshop for us. John just celebrated 50 years as an Eta Kappa Nu member. He was inducted in 1971 at the Beta chapter at Purdue. Right, John? It's a great milestone. So 50 years a member. He's also an IEEE Fellow and past president of the Power and Energy Society, a director of the IEEE Foundation, and actually serves on the board and the Strategic Planning Committee. So we're really thrilled to have John with us. He's been mentoring and developing mentoring programs for students, for young professionals, and he puts his time and energy into helping others succeed. That's the true spirit of Eta Kappa Nu. John is an inspirational leader with a passion for HKN, and I thank you so much, John, for leading us today and for being with us.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, Nancy, and this is a fun topic for me. You know, we usually give a lot of technical talks, and what's very important, I think, is in addition to the technical things that we do, is really ourselves, right? Our careers, our health, our personal well-being, our work-life balance, and things like that. So that's what I did was, it was for the IEEE Power and Energy Society and the Student Congress. It was all the IEEE PS student members in regions 1 through 7, so it was the entire US and Canada. And I decided to give this as a keynote talk, not a technical talk, but really somewhat landmark. You know, I reviewed like my 46, almost 47-year full-time engineering career, and I thought about 12 key decisions I had made in those years that really impacted the rest of my career. And my thinking was, if I could convey those 12 key things to students and young people, if you had that as a head start, you know, early in your career, you could do a much better job of making decisions and managing your career. I stumbled on these along my career. Boy, if I could have known all these, you know, when I was a student or a young professional, you know, maybe I could have optimized things a little bit more. So you can see I've had a lot of leadership positions. This is my 50th year in IEEE, in addition to 50 years in HKN, and a lot of leadership positions in IEEE and the IEEE Power and Energy Society. Let me just point out, though, and I really feel strongly about this, is we need, and I'm going to talk about this, one of the 12 key things is you need to have a good balance between internal and external focus. Internal focus is like your academics, right, all the time, or you know, or if you're a young professional in the workplace, you know, going to work, doing a good job with your work and coming home. In 100% internal focus, you don't develop your career much at all. You really need to get involved in external or outside activities. IEEE HKN is a good example. This is where, and I'm gonna talk about this more, the benefits of that, but this is where you truly develop yourself, personal development. Now, part of this also is good health and, you know, regular exercise and eating healthy. I'll tell you what, it's very easy. You know, I have 4.5 million miles on Delta Airlines and traveling a lot. And I got to a phase in even though I played a lot of sports all my life, I got to a phase where I was traveling so much and so busy with work, I wasn't exercising. And my daughter was going to a boot camp in the morning, and my daughter said, "Dad, you need to go with me." And she was right. And this is where I first met. On the lower right here is Des White, star wide receiver for Georgia Tech, and played for the Chicago Bears and the Atlanta Falcons, so a professional American football player. I've been working out with him 5 mornings a week for, this is my 11th year. Drop 25 pounds, run 5K races, usually win my age group, and I'll be 70 years old in December this year, but I can outrun and outlast many young people. So, you know, take good care of yourself. The top right picture here is when my son graduated from, he's Georgia Tech EE, got his MBA at Duke. And at Duke University on the campus, there's a very famous 5K trail. And the morning after his MBA graduation, we ran that 5K trail, okay? So, you know, when you think of the complete picture, it's not just academics, it's not just work, but it's taking good care of yourself. And what you find is the better health you have, the better you feel physically, you'll feel better mentally, and actually you'll be more effective with your work. It's really an ecosystem that all helps itself, okay? So I don't know how many of you student members of IEEE get IEEE Potentials magazine. And they asked me to write an article in the November-December 2011 issue on what was my first full-time engineering job and what did I learn from it. And so I grew up in the Chicago area, went to Purdue University for my bachelor's and master's in electrical engineering. But in 1974, I accepted my first full-time engineering job in downtown San Francisco, which was really adventurous at the time. My mom cried because she said, you know, we can't afford to visit you, and we can't afford to even call you, because back then phone calls were based on distance. The cost was based on distance. But I was very adventurous, independent, and I was really looking forward to working and living somewhere where I didn't know anybody, you know, and just start from scratch. But this is a photo of me at work, and this is actually in summer of 1975, and it was Bechtel Corporation. And let me go through a few key lessons learned, because I'm sure some of you experienced these yourself. I was doing all the technical studies for what would be the U.S.'s largest copper refinery in Texas, doing all the technical studies, the power system technical expert on the project, as a new graduate, right, a new employee. But my manager spent hours having me go through with him all the studies I did, and then when the client came into town, It was my manager that presented my work to the client in a client meeting and never once gave me any credit for doing that work. And this is the first bullet here. I said, don't let a disappointing work situation affect your attitude at work, because things will change. You know, I could have had a knee-jerk reaction at the time and said, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm either going to leave the company or I'm going to find another project within the same company to work on. I won't put up with this anymore. But you know something? I really feel that, you know, things in the workplace are never, and actually things in life are not forever, right? Things change. So you know what I did? I always did good work. I never let it compromise the quality of my work, dependability, deadlines, things like that. I did good work and explained everything to this fellow. I'll never forget, I came into work on a Monday morning and his desk was empty and his books were gone. And you can see the fellow sitting behind me in the picture, Chuck, was the chief electrical engineer for the whole project. He came up to me that morning, he said, John, he said, from now on, when the client comes into town, you will be the one, you know, I was like 22 years old, you will be the one to present all these results to the client. And in that meeting will be like very senior people on the project, and then me as a new graduate. And Chuck said, I know you've been doing all the work, so you know things won't change from the client point of view. It's just that you'll get the credit for what you've been doing. Boy, what an opportunity for me, and I would have blown that if I would have made a knee-jerk reaction, you know, and said I'm not going to put up with this. So it's very important to realize, because it will change, things will change. I also felt that the guy sitting behind me, who was on the phone all the time making decisions for the project, I said, gee, this guy is indispensable. You know, if we ever lost him, the project would fail. Came into work on another Monday morning, his desk was empty, you know. And I said, what's going to happen now to the project? And it was fine. Project was very successful. So it's a good lesson for me. No one is indispensable. Continue to do more than expected and provide value to the company. And the best lesson here is, don't think you're so valuable that you're indispensable. That's a very dangerous feeling to have, okay? Now, when I was in graduate school, we were still using slide rules. HP and Texas Instruments had not offered calculators yet to the industry, okay? We didn't have any calculators. So when I started working at Bechtel in 74, 75, and we got our first calculators, I had the first HP programmable calculator that it was the HP 65 at the time, and I was writing programs for. And I'm doing short circuit studies. I'm coming up with like fault currents of 22,222.34 amps, you know. And my manager, he came up to my desk and looked at my work and he smiled. He said, John, what I want from you is accuracy without precision. And I said, wow, that is so true. You know, as engineers, as technical people, we're many times overly precise. We're just totally out of whack with what's needed in the real world. And I'll never forget that. So with everything that you do, really think of the context of the result of what you're doing, and really practice accuracy without precision in all your engineering work. Now, my master's thesis was the world's first, what we call three-phase load flow, the world's first ability to model the power system on a full three-phase unbalanced basis in 1973 and 74. It had never been done before. And my major professor, who wrote the first book in 1968 called Computer Methods and Power System Analysis, El Abiyad, wanted me to stay and get a PhD. There was so much more we could do on our master's work. But I said, no, I really want to start working, and I want to get an MBA, because I really feel that a good engineer should have not only good technical knowledge of what's going on, but a good business knowledge of what's going on. I see so many young engineers not get projects approved in their companies because they can't formulate their project in a business case scenario. They're just wrapped up in the technology, bits and bytes. But you know, things like benefit cost ratio, payback period, you know, improvement in reliability, environmental benefits, things like that. You have to put a different hat on, basically, and look at your technical project from a business point of view. And the MBA, for me, at the University of California, Berkeley, really helped me out a lot. And I specialized in finance, which gave me some important skills, not only for work, but also in managing my personal finances. Also, in the United States, what's very important is, even though you may not see a need for it right away, always take the fundamentals of engineering exam while you're in school or right after school, and then take the professional engineer exam as soon as you can and get your PE license. You know, it turns out the first company I worked for here in this photo, they told us as new graduates, they said, we will give you your first business card when you pass the PE exam, but not until then, okay? And so we, you know, the company had a 17-week PE review course to prepare young people for the exam. I took the course, passed the exam, and then was an instructor in the course and taught 2 of the 17 classes after I passed it myself. Also serve as a mentor for young people. You know, Nancy emphasized this, and I say at the stage of my career that I'm in, after all these years of doing so many things, my greatest joy today is I don't need many more awards or recognition myself, truly. I mean, they're nice, but I don't need those. I really am excited and really happy when somebody I've been helping is successful themselves, and I see how happy they are. So, you know, help other people, provide value to other people as much as you can. And then get involved in outside activities, like I say IEEE Power and Energy Society, but, you know, HKN, IEEE, you know, offer to give talks. Don't ever think that you're not qualified to give a talk. Always offer to give a talk. Teach courses. I started developing industry standards with IEEE when I was younger, you know, and that was a great way to learn the technology, to expand my network. And I offered to be a working group chair after just 1 year in the substations committee of the IEEE Power and Energy Society. So 3 things. You want to learn the technology better, expand your network, and volunteer for leadership opportunities. Very, very important. Okay? So one thing I wanted to know is, how many of you are an IEEE member? Could you please indicate that? And we'll wait about 15 seconds for everyone to respond. Okay. So let me see if I'll advance. Okay, so we're about 80% yes. And I really encourage those of you that aren't members to join, okay? I can't tell you enough about how much I've learned. You know, I have a much better idea, particularly of the global nature of technology in depth. I have an unbelievable network of industry contacts all through IEEE. And I've had so many leadership. You know, think of IEEE as a voluntary organization. There's no pre-qualifications for you to be a leader. You just volunteer, and it's a great opportunity. And you know, from a young person's point of view, the only limit on your career is the limit you put on yourself. It's yourself. The sky is the limit. There is no limit. You know, so don't limit yourself in developing your career and yourself. Go out and volunteer for these things, and your personal development will be phenomenal, okay? So one important thing is having a mentor. Very, very important. You should all have at least one mentor. I say preferably more than one, then you can get different perspectives on things, but meet or talk on a regular basis, a minimum of 1 hour per month. A lot of the young people I mentor, if they have something come up with work or at school, They say, John, I want to talk. Can we talk right? Today. I need to talk to you right. So we may talk 2 or 3 times in 1 week or more, depending on what they're involved in. So but you want to spend at least an hour a month, and hopefully more so than that. Now, another interesting thing is we had a reverse mentoring program at GE. So we had a Chris, picture in the lower right here, new graduate from University of Georgia in IT Management Information Systems. He joined our GE IT Leadership Program, a 2-year rotational program, and he was my reverse mentor for 3 years, okay? We met regularly, and he helped teach me about software applications that were at GE. He helped me set up the blog that I used to do at GE, the platform, understand the platform, and help me with my blogs. And I taught him a lot about the industry and gave him copies of some of my books and went through those with him for his own reference library. By the way, there's an article in Computer World magazine, I have the link here, about reverse mentoring, and they interviewed Chris and asked him about the benefits of reverse mentoring and his experiences talking with me for the 3 years. And it was funny, he said, John, Computer World magazine is going to interview me. I've never been interviewed before. You got to help me prepare. And I said, Chris, you'll do a good job, and he did. The upper right picture is Chin Yan. She won the poster contest. It was the PhD students at Texas A&M University, and I was one of the judges of the poster contest, all the research they were doing for their PhDs, and she won, and I was very proud of her. And I helped her then, when she graduated, to get a job at GE doing software development in our GE digital business. In the middle picture is Shatali Nayak. Shatali, I've gotten her very involved in IEEE now. But this was at the IEEE PES T&D conference in 2018 in Denver, and I helped her get approval from her manager to go to her very first IEEE conference. And this was in the GE booth, the exhibit booth. So I'm just curious, do you have at least one mentor who you meet with on a regular basis? And, at least 1 hour a month. I'd really be interested in how many of you have a mentor now? So wait a few seconds here and let everyone respond. Okay, so let's take a look. I figured this was the case, so it's about a third of you do, and this isn't unusual. It's something you may not have thought about yet. I actually started a pilot mentoring program in the IEEE Power and Energy Society earlier this year, and we did it for 3 months, January, February, March. But for those of you that don't, think about who a good mentor might be. And then, and a lot of these, I get a lot of connections from students worldwide through LinkedIn. They see my profile and they say, John, can you help me? So bottom line with mentoring, don't be afraid. If you see somebody that you want to mentor you, don't be afraid to ask them. I can't tell you how many young people I've talked to that said, by listening to me and this talk, they got the courage up to ask this person that they were afraid to ask. And they were so pleasantly surprised that the person said, yeah, I'd be happy to mentor you. But they sat back and they were afraid to ask for many, many months until I said, hey, don't be afraid, have the courage to ask. Okay. So again, you'll learn so much from the mentor so please do that. Please think about that and have at least one mentor. Okay. Now, no matter how executive you are in a company, you should always have a mentor. I mean, I'm at the executive level of GE, but I had a senior executive, more senior than me, assigned to me by HR, by human resources of our parent business. I met with this person for dinner and then lunches, excellent opportunity for me to be able to confide in a senior executive and receive very valuable feedback. So I said, you can do this on your own, or you can do it with your manager's help. So let me just say that this top photo is myself on the right. In the middle was Pat Ryan, the IEEE Executive Director, who passed away from cancer. Really sad last year. When I was president of the IEEE Power and Energy Society, I hired Pat in April of 2007, and then was the first IEEE Power and Energy Society president when Pat came on board as our new executive director. And then on the left here is Miroslav Begovic, who was he's now the department head of electrical engineering at Texas A&M University, and is a past IEEE PS president. This is in Paris. It's Seagray in Paris. Lower right is in Istanbul, Turkey, and I put together a panel session. So on the left is myself, and then Damir Novosel, a past PES president, Miroslav, and then Jay Geary on the right, very well known in the industry in energy management systems and what we call SCADA systems. And we did this in Istanbul. So again, this is part of expanding your network through IEEE activities. This is about internal and external focus. I mentioned this. Internal is what makes your studies or your business, whatever you do, tick. And external is what's happening in the world around you. And I really mean this. Decisions made without incorporating external trends and influences could be suboptimal. You may not be making the best decision for yourself, for your studies, for the company you work for. You really need a balance. Upper right is a panel session I was moderating in Sao Paulo, Brazil, with many key industry electric utility executives. In the lower right, you can see a lot of our young professionals at GE. We were getting ready to open up our exhibit booth at a big trade show in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I was getting them all energized before the customers started coming to our booth and asking us questions. A lot of fun. Now, international experience. The world is really very, very flat, and you really need to know the regional differences in technology, industry standards, regulation and policy, and business cases. Those four things are very important. You can't develop a product in the US or in Canada and expect that product to have a strong business case all throughout the world, because it probably won't. You really need to know the regional differences. And I say look for minimum 6-month assignments, international. Discuss with your manager to find an assignment. Utilize your network to find opportunities. And what you want to do is learn differences in cultures. For instance, as we know in Asia, when we exchange business cards in Asia, it's not like the US or it's not like North America. I put my computer bag down. I have both hands free. I grab my business card with both hands, right? And then it's basically presented to the person, because that's what they do to us. That's their culture. And you want to respect that culture. So we really need to learn the differences in cultures, because when you're traveling and overseas, you want to know the culture of the people in the country you're with. Now, upper right photo is, you see me with a kurta, my wife with a sari, my son with a kurta, and my son fell in love with a beautiful girl from Mumbai, India. So I have family in India, which I'm very proud to say. And her name is Meeta. And we were going to a friend's wedding in Chicago, Indian family. And so we were ready to go, leaving the hotel and going to the wedding. My mom is Greek, and my dad is Scotch-Irish. And my dream was to go to a wedding in Scotland with a kilt on, but the tartan of the kilt was the Dress McDonald tartan. And so lower right is a hotel in Edinburgh, Scotland, just before my wife and I went to the wedding. And she took this photo of me just outside the front door of the hotel. This was a dream of mine that I had for a long, long time. And it was one of the best days of my life. I'll never forget that day, being in Scotland, dressed in a kilt at a wedding in Scotland. Okay. So let me ask you, how many of you have worked or studied outside North America? very interested to see, you know, things today are so different because people, well, pre-COVID, everyone was flying a lot and being able to travel around the country and study abroad programs and things like that. So, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought the percentage of yes would be a little bit higher. Okay, well maybe. So my you know, I want to make the point again that it's very important that you get as much international experience as you can, because you become much richer in your broad perspective of things. You know, you not only learn the cultures, but you learn the regional differences, I said, in many key areas, okay? Training is very important. And the reason I emphasize this, because I've always emphasized this, is internal and external. Internal meaning if you're working full-time, your company will have internal courses, but that's not enough. You want internal and external. So first with internal, be familiar with available training courses within your company. Determine those that you want to take for next year and discuss those with your manager well before year end. And it should be part of your annual review. And I really mean this. You have to drive this. In business, many managers, they don't think about stuff like this. They really don't. They're really not good with career development and developing your career. You have to drive that yourself. So you need to be familiar with the courses. You need to know which ones you want to take. Put a schedule together. You know, I want to take these this year, these next year, and then drive that. You know, discuss it with your manager and drive it. On the lower left here, this was exciting. In 2015, I have 5 books that I've co-authored, and Professor Minnie Thomas from India, by the way, she's the only woman in India that's ever been a director of an IIT or an NIT, and she's in a 5-year assignment now as the director of the NIT in Trichy. Okay, normally she's a professor at a university in Delhi, but she and I spent over 2 years and wrote a book, and this is at an IEEE Power and Energy Society general meeting in 2015 in Denver when the book was first published. First copy of the book, and after spending all these years working on it, it felt so good to hold the actual final, you know, copy of the book. This is Minnie and I in 2015, and then lower right is really privileged to be invited by Tsinghua University in Beijing, the premier engineering university in China, to give a smart grid workshop to the professors and the graduate students at Tsinghua University. So that was after the workshop, we took a group picture. Okay. Now, external training. Be familiar with available external courses. You know, IEEE is a great source for courses. I've done many for IEEE Power and Energy Society, IEEE Smart Grid, and the IEEE Educational Activities Group. There's industry conference tutorials. There's university continuing education courses. You know, I teach a 3-day course with a professor at Georgia Tech on modern energy management systems every year. We've been doing it for 25 years. It's a great course, you know, that you could take. And then distance learning courses. Choose at least 1 or 2 to take each year. Discuss with your manager again to get approval. Again, you need to drive this. And what's important is once you get your professional engineer license in the United States, the state boards require a minimum number of education credits every year. And I've been audited. I'm registered in 3 states. And during my renewal in the last 5 years for 2 of the 3 states, they audited me. I had to send them copies of certificates, my professional development hours that I received, and you have to have a certain minimum number each year. Okay, so training, no matter how old you are, how experienced you are, training is something that never ends. Okay, it should always continue. Internal and external training. The top picture here, Professor Aaron St. Ledger, this is at the United States Military Academy at West Point. He was the one that started our Young Professionals program in the IEEE Power and Energy Society, but I taught a couple electrical engineering courses for him at West Point. And while we were there, we went out on the roof of the Thayer building, which is where the EE courses are. And he had photovoltaic panels installed on the roof of the building. And just inside the building is a laboratory where students could build circuits and then power the circuits from the PV panels from the sun. Lower left is a workshop I gave in Istanbul, Turkey, at a university there. And lower right, it was the night before I gave a one-day course in San Jose, Costa Rica. And on the left is the chapter chair in San Jose, Costa Rica. And in the middle is, some of you may, if you're in the Power and Energy Society, he just finished a 5-year term, Juan Carlos Montero, as the VP of outreach for the IEEE Power and Energy Society. Okay, very active in the IEEE. So let me ask you, just out of curiosity, have you ever taken an online IEEE course or webinar? Please respond. You know, when COVID, what was it, a year ago, March, the IEEE Power and Energy Society made a number of the IEEE courses free. They didn't cost, they made those free because people were at home and working virtually. They said, well, we'll make these free for a period of time. And a one-day course I normally teach at an IEEE PS conference was made free for some months for people to take, which was a nice benefit. So let's see. That's really good. Over half of you have taken an online IEEE course or webinar. You know, many of these are either low cost or no cost. So if you're interested, you know, for example, the IEEE Power and Energy Society has a resource center. And on that resource center are all the courses and webinars that are available. That's good. I'm happy to see that. Now, job length. In my generation, I say we would typically spend 3 to 4 years on a job. And I see with younger folks today, you feel like you've mastered something very quickly and you say, okay, I'm ready to move on. It's shortened to maybe 1.5 to 2 years or maybe even less. Once you learn the job, you meet challenges and want to move on. I call this somewhat of a microwave mentality, you know. I think we all have that where, okay, it's time for lunch. We put something in a microwave and 30 seconds later we have lunch. And we're used to mastering something and getting something done quickly, right? I really recommend a minimum, you know, I say 2 years here, but you really want to spend enough time with each assignment to know the work and to know the people well. I'm going to talk about this in a minute here about what I mean by knowing the work. You want to know enough of the depth of the technology and the depth of the work that you're doing and not just be a surface person that just knows the surface of things, okay? Longer assignments also force you to live with the impact of your decision. So the two pictures on the right, this is my granddaughter Ashley some years ago. She's 9 now. But this was a hamburger restaurant in Indianapolis, Indiana. And this is you can see this is a 1-pound hamburger. And if you could eat it in less than an hour, I think it was free. And they took a photo of you and put it on the wall of the restaurant. Well, I've always had an unbelievable ability to eat a tremendous amount of food. And I've competed in many eating contests all my life. So I knew I could eat 2 or 3 1-pound hamburgers easily. I ate this 1-pound hamburger in about 5 minutes. But for the photo on the wall of the restaurant is the bottom photo with Ashley on my lap, and we're holding the plate up saying, all gone, you know, there's nothing left. And she was mesmerized. She just stared at me eating this big burger in a record amount of time, wondering, you know, where's all this food going? And it was a fun experience. Lower left, in terms of job length, this is actually U.S. history. My brother was being sworn in as the 8th Secretary of Veterans Affairs in the history of the United States. So he was a cabinet secretary for 2.5 years for President Obama. And this is in the 10th floor of the VA building in Washington, D.C., in the secretary's office. And I held the Bible for his swearing-in ceremony. So this was in July of 2014, and he served then for the next 2.5 years. So there was a definite link to his job, because when Obama's second term ended, the cabinet secretaries then changed, right? So this is what I mean about breadth versus depth. If you don't spend enough time in your job, you only learn the surface of things. You know, you don't know the depth. And I'll tell you, when you start working and you're talking to colleagues or even potential customers, and the customers ask you a question, if you don't have the depth to provide value to the customer may not really want to meet with you again, because the customer doesn't learn anything from you, right? You don't have anything to add to the discussion. It's really important that you don't become a surface person. You know, a surface knowledge of a lot of things, but you can't get into the depth. You really need to know the depth. Focus on the depth with everything you do rather than staying on the surface. You'll have more value within your company, much more value with your company's customers. And I really mean this. External focus with industry participation leadership provides depth and broader perspective. And companies are really trending towards experts in an area and domain, not just general managers or general people. And I'll tell you, this is ironic, but a good example of this, the picture in the upper right, my daughter, for the first time some years ago, got a side loading washer and a side loading dryer. She'd always had top loading. And my 2 grandchildren, you know, they were delivered, installed. She did her first load of wash. And my grandkids had never seen a side loading machine like that, and where you could see the clothes actually spinning around. And a surface person would have just walked by and said, hey, that's different and it's cool, but just walk by. They went into another room of the house, got their little chairs from their table, brought them right in front of the washer, sat down together and just watched the clothes go around on their own. And I said, what a great example of somebody wanting to know the depth. You know, spend the time, study it, and know the depth. And then lower right was fun at my daughter's home with her husband and my grandkids, where I was going to give Ashley a horsey ride, and I got down on all fours. Ashley was going to get on, and my wife put our dog at the time on my back. This was our previous dog, Sky. And Sky was my buddy, you know, and she was very comfortable there and wasn't about to leave. She was going to stay forever. And Ashley's saying, wait a minute, I want to be up there to get a horsey ride. And the look on Ashley's face is precious. She said, you know, what do I do? Sky's going to stay there. So depth is very important. Now, part of the microwave mentality is being too transactional. You know, you say, okay, I've got something that I need from this person. I go to that person, I say, hey, I need this. You get it, and then you leave. Yeah, there's no like, hey, how you doing? You know, how are things? What are you working on? You know, I mean, it's very transactional. And in business, we're very that way too. You know, our executives at companies say, you know, what orders can you bring in next week? What orders can you bring in by the end of the quarter? But wait a minute now. You know, what about 2 quarters from now? What about next year? What about investment in R&D for a year from now? Everybody is very short-term, very transactional versus strategic. Most businesses have a strong transactional focus and emphasis. You know, what orders can be converted quickly? How will we meet financial targets for the quarter? And they really need to have a balance. Some businesses have long sales cycles, like a software business, integrated solutions, and that drives executives crazy because, you know, it takes a year or 2 to get the sale. You have to continue to fill the pipeline with opportunities. That's strategic. So business positioning and closing orders. So there needs to be a balance here, okay? So don't be in such a hurry with friends, you know, with customers, with people, that you just are transactional. You know, you just say, once I fulfill that need, I'm gone. Now, in the upper right is an IEEE Partner Society governing board dinner. And I don't know if you can see, but the old pointers we used before LED pointers were telescopic, right? You actually unfolded them and they could be 3 or 4 feet long. Well, I have one that's a fork at the end. And people know, my eating ability is my reputation. And so Manny Venkata, who was the department head at Iowa State University and formerly a professor at University of Washington in Seattle. Anyway, he was always fun to tease for me. When I was president of the IEEE-PS, he was my VP of publications and, education or publications. But anyway, whenever we were served dinner, when they served dessert, I would always sneak up behind a couple people away from him, extend my fork and steal his dessert. So you can see with his left hand, he caught my fork here, caught me in the act of stealing his dessert. And this was a lot of fun. Mel Olkin here was the first executive director of the IEEE Power and Energy Society. Roberto DeMarca at the time was the IEEE president, was with us. There's Professor Minnie Thomas. And so it was a good group of people. Now talk about strategic, lower right. Here I'm talking one-on-one with Jim Lovell. If you've seen Apollo 13 and you see the spacecraft that had the explosion and Jim Lovell was the captain and he and the 2 astronauts, it was all they could do to figure out how they could get enough electricity, remember, in the capsule and the oxygen to get back to Earth alive. And so it was fascinating to have a 5-10 minute talk with Jim Lovell about just life in general and talk about strategy when your life is at stake. That's the ultimate strategic decision, right? Networking. Always develop and expand your network. Now, provide value with every acquaintance and every event. Cultivate long-term personal relationships. Don't be so transactional that you don't cultivate a personal relationship, right? Spend time with people, get to know the people, stay in touch with personal relationships on a continual basis. Continue to provide value to people. And future job opportunities, both within your company and outside your company, come from your network. Really do. Top right here, Al Rotz is a past IEEE PES president. And Al and his wife, Pat, and my wife, Joanne, and I, very close friends. We got together at their home in the Philadelphia area and spent a long weekend. Lower right is Noel Schultz, was the 2nd female president of the IEEE Power and Energy Society, and I was the one that convinced her to run. She wasn't too sure about it, and I convinced her to run, and she won. And she's an electrical engineering professor now at Washington State University. Her husband, Kirk, is the president of the university, the president of Washington State. So when I go there to give talks to Noel's classes, I stay at the university president's home on campus. And this is a photo from the president's home on campus. Social media. I want to emphasize this. The most important thing each of you should do is to have a very detailed profile on LinkedIn. It's the most important for work and industry. It developed detailed personal profile, very critical. Ask for written recommendations from peers and managers. I just had a request from a young female student who she's going to graduate soon in Chennai, India, to write a recommendation for her over the weekend for her LinkedIn profile. Okay, it helps you to grow the number of strategic connections that you have. I'm up to now about over 14,000 connections on LinkedIn. Okay, so expand your network. I use Twitter also. And I know Nancy, uses LinkedIn and Twitter a lot to promote HKN activities. Very, very important. And I use Facebook a lot, but primarily for personal use. The upper right here is the Weather Channel in Atlanta here, and they interviewed me on the 10th anniversary of the 2003 blackout in the northeast of the U.S. and Canada, and said basically, what have we done in the last 10 years to prevent that from happening again? And lower right is an interview I did for social media in Istanbul, Turkey. Okay. So let me ask you, do you have a LinkedIn profile? that you keep updated on a regular basis. And let me just say while you're submitting that, is at GE, we have experts that grade our profiles on 14 criteria. And I have one of the top, after a lot of work, I have one of the top profiles at GE. So if you have a question about what do I need to do to my profile, connect with me on LinkedIn if you're not already, and really look at my profile and see what I've done to it and all the parts to it and what I've done with each part, and it'd be a good model for your own. Okay, feel free to do that. Fantastic. So what's very important here is not that you just have the profile, but you keep it updated on a regular basis. And I'll tell you why. Companies, the HR departments in many companies pay LinkedIn, and they do keyword searches of profiles, and that's how they find candidates for job opportunities. So the more detailed your profile is, the better chance you have of being identified by recruiters, headhunters for job opportunities. Okay, very important. All right, so work-life balance. You want to have flexibility with work-life balance. I always wanted jobs where I had flexibility so I could participate in my kids' activities. You're never too busy with work to talk with your spouse or kids. You want to spend quality time with them, no email, texting, computer games, things like that. And there's a technique that we use called PAR, probe, align, raise, and it helps us more effectively engage with work and family situations. I don't have time here to go through that, but I'd be happy to do that at some other time. Actually, I'm going to be hosting a mixer on key decisions when we finish here. So if you want to join us in the mixer, and I'm going to be doing the same thing tomorrow at 5 o'clock, we could talk about it. Okay. But these are some photos, my wife and I, my son when he was in kindergarten on my knee, and then my son many, many years later reenacting that pose, my daughter and I, and then our family we actually have with 4 dogs here. My granddaughter's holding a little black dog. That's my son and his wife. So we're we love dogs, our whole family. So you want to, I always felt I wanted to have a job that paid well, challenged me, but gave me flexibility to be the Cub Scout den leader, to volunteer in my kids' school. Here is Bruno, our dog, my wife and I, after a training class that we did. This is my birthday here right before Christmas, and my grandkids thought it'd be fun after we had the cake to try to climb on my back. You see their immense joy here in doing that to their papa. I volunteered in in Ashley's 3rd grade class at the time and did a math center, and her teacher took this photo, which is precious because we didn't anticipate doing a photo. And then before I left, she said, "John, let's get a photo before you leave." And she said, "Ashley, hold up the work you did with your papa in the math center." And then this was at Disney World. So career planning, you have to drive that yourself. It should be an important part of your annual review, but most managers don't spend time on that. So think about all the things we talked about in these slides, your internal goals, external goals, training needs. Take the initiative for a lot of this stuff. Your company will probably not encourage you to do this, but follow through with your manager. But always bring value back to your business to reinforce your participation. Lower left are some close friends. Natalie was on the IEEE Foundation staff for a while. Babak is very active in IEEE, and I've been mentoring him for a number of years. Lower middle are 2 graduate students at Arizona State University at an industry conference. I was having dinner with them. And then lower right middle is a professor. She's retired now from Clemson in electrical engineering. And on the left is my nephew, who attended one of my talks at Duke Energy in cybersecurity. Okay. And then this is my very last slide. I just want to show you that, here in the upper right, I'm at IEEE headquarters. Lower right is a talk I gave to students at a university in Tunisia. So I spent some time in Tunisia and gave talks at 3 universities to the students and then 1 industry conference. Interesting in Tunisia that over 2/3 of the electrical engineering students in the country are female. So the leaders of all these student branches, it was very rare for me to find a male in the leadership, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was so energetic and so much fun. I really enjoyed that trip. This photo here, next to that, is in Ghana, and I represented the IEEE a couple of years ago, the 3-year strategic humanitarian initiative to help electrify the countries of Ghana and Zambia. So here I'm with IEEE leaders in Ghana, and I led 3 days of meetings with different people in Ghana. And then left corner is Zambia, outside the university in Zambia after a workshop I gave. This photo, second from left in the bottom, is the second oldest university in Europe. It's the University of Bologna, Italy. Carlo Alberto Nucci is a professor there, well known in IEEE. And you may know Cecilia Metra. Cecilia was the first female president of the IEEE Computer Society, and she attended my talk, and she is a professor at the University of Bologna. And then a very special time, upper left, you may remember Barry Shoup was the IEEE president in 2016, very close friend, he and his wife Linda. And I went to his retirement ceremony at West Point, and this is a photo from that ceremony. So you can see how important IEEE has been to me, with a network of friends, how much I've learned, and all the leadership opportunities I've had. So let me I'll stop at I'll stop at that point. 100%. And that's the end of my prepared material.